I'm Laurie Cardoza-Moore, and this is Focus on Israel. In 2015, the Obama administration signed a dangerous nuclear agreement with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu strongly opposed the framework and claimed that the current plan of action threatened the survival of Israel. He further stated that such a deal would not block Iran's path to the bomb, it would pave it. This was one of many harmful actions the Obama administration made against our greatest ally. But today, with the Trump administration, a new start was signaled. America would once again stand up and stand with Israel. Hello, and thank you for joining me today on Focus on Israel. Like most Americans, in 2001, I began to ask a lot of questions about what happened to our country following 9/11. As I read and talked to experts, the issues of radical Islam and the attacks on America and Israel became extremely personal to me. I realized that Israel is facing threats from nearly every corner as much of the world comes against the Jewish state. So if you're a Christian, why should you care? Many Christians believe that as the Jews rejected Jesus, then God has rejected them. This replacement theology is growing as many Christians believe they have replaced the Jews in God's prophetic plan. If you truly believe the Bible is the Word of God, then you know that when He speaks of Israel, He is speaking about the land of Israel and all 12 tribes, not the church. The mission of this series and PJTN is to educate and equip you so that you can share this truth with your family and friends. Since its creation in 1948, America has allied itself with the only democracy in the Middle East, Israel. For years, prominent politicians in both parties and many prominent Americans were Zionists and lovers of the Jewish state. Even some Hollywood movies were pro-Israel, with stars like Paul Newman in Exodus, and Kirk Douglas, Yul Brynner, and Frank Sinatra in Cast a Giant Shadow. Even John Wayne gave his talent to back Israel.
There's a lot of us will stand up with you. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Today we see anti-Israel and anti-Semitic statements and rhetoric coming from both Hollywood and Washington. Fortunately, the new administration is not shy in backing Israel on all levels and fighting against anti-Semitism. In his recent State of the Union address, President Trump spent more time than any previous president speaking about the growing threats to Israel and the Jewish people.
My administration has acted decisively to confront the world's leading state sponsor of terror, the radical regime in Iran, to ensure this corrupt dictatorship never acquires nuclear weapons. I withdrew the United States from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. And last fall, we put in place the toughest sanctions ever imposed by us on a country. We will not avert our eyes from a regime that chants death to America and threatens genocide against the Jewish people. We must never ignore the vile poison of anti-Semitism or those who spread its venomous creed. With one voice, we must confront this hatred anywhere and everywhere it occurs. Just months ago, 11 Jewish Americans were viciously murdered in an anti-Semitic attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. SWAT officer Timothy Matson raced into the gunfire and was shot 7 times chasing down the killer, and he was very successful. Timothy has just had his 12th surgery, and he's going in for many more. But he made the trip to be here with us tonight. Officer Matson, please. Thank you. We are forever grateful. Thank you very much. Tonight, we are also joined by Pittsburgh survivor, Judah Samet. He arrived at the synagogue as the massacre began. But not only did Judah narrowly escape death last fall, more than 7 decades ago, he narrowly survived the Nazi concentration camps. Today is Judah's 81st birthday. Judah says he can still remember the exact moment nearly 75 years ago, after 10 months in a concentration camp, when he and his family were put on a train and told they were going to another camp. Suddenly, the train screeched to a very strong halt. A soldier appeared. Judah's family braced for the absolute worst. Then his father cried out with joy, "It's the Americans, it's the Americans." A second Holocaust survivor who is here tonight, Joshua Kaufman, was a prisoner at Dachau. He remembers watching through a hole in the wall of a cattle car as American soldiers rolled in with tanks. To me, Joshua recalls, the American soldiers were proof that God exists, and they came down from the sky, they came down from heaven. I began this evening by honoring 3 soldiers who fought on D-Day in the Second World War. One of them was Herman Zaitchik. But there is more to Herman's story. A year after he stormed the beaches of Normandy, Herman was one of the American soldiers who helped liberate Dachau.
On a recent trip to Israel, I had the opportunity to speak with Rabbi Dov Lipman. Rabbi Lipman was born in Washington, D.C., and grew up in Maryland. In D.C., he served as an intern for Congressman John Dingell and received his rabbinic ordination while studying for a master's in education at Johns Hopkins University. In 2004, he immigrated to Israel and served as a member of the Knesset between 2013 and 2015. Lipman headed the Knesset's delegation to the parliaments of South Africa and England and took part in diplomatic missions to Germany, Hungary, and the United States. Today, he hosts a weekly radio show on Voice of Israel called One Nation with Dov Lipman and writes columns for the Jerusalem Post and the Times of Israel. Rabbi Lipman spoke to me about the new start between America and Israel.
As someone who grew up in the United States and now lives in Israel, I'm in a position where I can really appreciate what America and Israel shares. They're both countries that are built off faith, not a country that's exclusive to people of faith. America welcomes all people, whether religious or secular. Israel welcomes all people, religious or secular, but it's built off a faith-based ideology, which is equality for all, which is no to dictatorship, democracy, freedom of faith, freedom of worship, fighting against racism and discrimination. And all countries have to go through a process, and America is certainly going through that process as it moves away from a history which was not simple when it comes to some of those issues. Israel has its challenges when it comes to those issues as well, but believing in an ultimate goal of equality and justice for all. I stood up every single morning at school and said the Pledge of Allegiance in the United States, and I said it with pride, and that pledge could absolutely be transferred to here as well. Just those values of equality and tolerance and coexistence that America should stand for. However, we're also in the same battle, one country with the other, against an ideology which seeks to destroy that. The Islamic jihadist ideology, which says if you're not like us, we are going to kill you. Make no mistake about it. The fight that Israel has against terrorism is the exact same fight the United States has against terrorism. I just heard the Secretary of Homeland Security of the United States said, if Americans would know what I know, they wouldn't get out of bed in the morning and go to work, in terms of the threats that are out there. And American security agencies and intelligence agencies are hard at work every single second, protecting Americans from a radical Islamic ideology, which is seeking to find a moment to hit America again. That's what Israel is against. My son is in the Israeli army to fight against that. We're fighting against an enemy, which is the same enemy of radical Islam, which is seeking to destroy all of us, Jews, Christians, and even Muslims who are moderate in nature. So we, on the one hand, share the same positive values. On the other hand, we're in the exact same fight against this enemy, and Americans in particular have to realize that. We're in this together. When they hear about a terror attack in Israel, that's not, oh, that's the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. No, that's the core American values that Israel embraces, fighting against the enemy that America is fighting against. And once we realize that we're all in this together, both on the positive value side and the enemy we're fighting against, and if we sort of link hands and join together in this battle, we'll be so much stronger in doing so. And with God's help, we'll be able to, on the one hand, fight off that horrible enemy and destroy it. On the other hand, bring more light to the world for the shared values that we have. Israelis have a confidence that the American-Israeli alliance will stay strong, and whichever leader is in office, there's an American population out there, and the American people have to get it. The average American has to understand the significance of this relationship, but we don't take it for granted, and we have to think about what's going to be in 20 years when today's college students are the leaders in the United States, and what are they being taught on their campuses? And these are things that we live with fear in Israel, because we don't know what's going to be. So we have to never take it for granted, always work on it, regardless who the president is. We have to try to reach out and work together, and that's very much the Israeli attitude. There's no doubt that when President Trump was elected, there was a feeling in Israel of maybe there could be a new beginning here, maybe things could be even better. And I want to be very careful. As an Israeli, we appreciate all the help that we've been getting from America over the years, and that's crossed all administrations, and I want to express that gratitude. There's no statement here of a gripe of any kind in terms of we're getting military support, intelligence support, and it's something which, again, we help America as well with intelligence that goes both ways. But there was a feeling of it could be even warmer, it could be even stronger, there could be no daylight between the two countries. And there was a moment where, wow, maybe there will be some freshness and newness and stronger ties, faith-based ties between those countries. Seeing how our Prime Minister was welcomed to the White House certainly added to that feeling in terms of the honor that was given to him, a full honor guard. Again, for Israel, people have to realize we feel isolated. We're in this sea, island of democracy, in this sea of Islamic jihadist dictatorships in the Middle East. And we continue to flourish, but we hear all this rhetoric around the world, anti-Israel rhetoric, that we're somehow responsible for all the evils that are going on. We're the one flourishing democracy in the Middle East. We're the one country in the Middle East where women have rights. We're the one country in the Middle East where every faith can worship, and yet we feel so alone. I travel around the world as a member of parliament. You cannot imagine the venom and the anti-Israel rhetoric that's out there. So the idea that a White House will welcome an Israeli prime minister with a full honor guard and really roll out the red carpet and treat us as the friends that we are. For Israel, the fact that a sitting president came to Israel on his first overseas trip, regardless if it was first stop, second stop, the fact that it happened, that's something which we also very much celebrate and very much appreciate, because it just strengthens that alliance. So from that perspective and the symbolism, it was a very important trip, and I think that all Israelis felt that way, whether more right-wing or left-wing, more conservative, more liberal. The fact that a sitting American president went to the Western Wall and prayed. That never happened before. So for us, this is the holiest site that we have today without our temple. That is something which really touched the hearts. No matter where you were politically, you watched that scene play out, something happened inside of you. The symbol of an American president taking that step was very important for Israelis, and certainly helped us feel that we're not alone, as we often do feel, and it's a sort of a warming of the relationship between the two countries. Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish people. That's an absolute truth, and we have to stand up and believe in that. The founding fathers of the United States of America believed in that. They were people who were people of faith. They were people who read the Bible. They were people who were knowledgeable on religious issues. They know that Israel is the Jewish homeland. They know that Jerusalem is the Jewish capital. That's what they knew. That's what America has to stand for today. The one thing that America should be demanding is stop inciting children towards terror. Stop teaching hate. That's an American value to embrace and welcome all, and then America can help be an honest broker to try to bring the Israelis and the Palestinians together.
This month marks the 70th anniversary of the historic Declaration of the State of Israel. God's sovereign hand can be seen all over this land. Included in the celebrations is the opening of the American Embassy right here in Jerusalem. In honor of this celebration, PJTN is offering a special 70th anniversary package, which includes a captivating new book and an award-winning DVD. Israel Rising is a unique visual story of Israel's miraculous journey from unforgiving desert to thriving nation. Thousands of years ago, the prophet Ezekiel foretold a future time in which the arid land of Israel would come alive for its people. Now this breathtaking book documents the fulfillment of this vision, as rarely seen photographs from the 1880s to the 1940s are juxtaposed with recent photos of the same locations. This book will inspire and captivate you as it illuminates Israel's foretold awakening in a new and unforgettable way. In addition, you'll receive the award-winning documentary, Israel Indivisible: The Case for the Ancient Homeland. This inspiring film examines the many political twists and turns that make Israel the world's most controversial nation. From Abraham and the Promise to the issues facing the Jewish state today, the film examines the historical, archaeological, legal, and biblical foundations for the modern state of Israel. This is a limited time offer for these two remarkable resources for just a one-time gift of $70 today. Your generous donation will help ensure that PJTN stays on the front lines and in the headlines of all the important issues facing Israel and our Jewish brethren. So please go to pjtn.org today. From studying history, it's very clear that what starts with the Jews never ends only with the Jews. We must strongly stand against any anti-Semitic trends, for if not stopped, they'll cause harm to all of us, and we'll witness the downfall of our Judeo-Christian Western culture. Today, many people say there's no longer a need for a Jewish state, that Jews around the world no longer need a place of refuge. But anyone who has heard recent statistics about the worldwide rise in anti-Semitism would never make such a claim. The reality is that neo-Nazi groups and Nazi sympathizers are increasing around the world. Surveys show that over 1 billion people in the world harbor anti-Semitic attitudes. Close to 50% believe that Jews have too much power in the business world, and 2/3 of the world's population has never heard of the Holocaust or believe the historic accounts of it are inaccurate. Don't let yourself be manipulated by evil people with a wicked agenda. When the self-serving villains are in control, good people from all religions suffer. Muslims, Christians, and all people of conscience should stand proudly and show respect for a country that gives so much to the world in so many ways. Do your part, do your research, and do what you can to make a difference. Because what happens in Israel does affect us all. This is not just a Jewish or just an Israeli problem. This is a problem for all humanity, for each and every one of us who believe in freedom and human rights. Learn more about what you can do at pjtn.org. Up next, I'll be speaking with Middle East correspondent and author Chris Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell began reporting on the Middle East in the mid-1990s and moved to Jerusalem to establish the CBN News Bureau there. Since then, he's reported from the front lines of the period's major events, from the Palestinian Intifada, the 2006 Second Lebanon War, the Arab Spring, and the rise of ISIS. He's also chronicled several prophetic trends, including the return of the Jewish people to Israel, the unprecedented revivals in the Muslim world, and the Back to Jerusalem movement, heralding the completion of the Great Commission. As an acclaimed author, he wrote Dateline Jerusalem, an eyewitness account of prophecies unfolding in the Middle East, and recently, Destination Jerusalem, ISIS, Convert or Die, Christian Persecution and Preparing for the Days Ahead. Mitchell's stories are seen on CBN's The 700 Club, and he presently hosts and serves as executive director of Jerusalem Dateline, a weekly half-hour program. After more than a quarter of a century with CBN, Chris states that his goal can be found in 1 Chronicles 12:32, to provide viewers with an understanding of the times for such a time as this. So I want to hear about the Israelis. So, we get little bits and pieces. What is the feeling? What's the consensus in Israel with regards to President Trump? What is the consensus there now with our president?
For the majority of people, I think they see President Trump as pro-Israel. Just a few days ago, I was speaking with an Israeli senior official, and he said they're comparing Trump to King Cyrus in the Bible, who actually blessed and helped the Jewish people centuries ago. And so they're really comparing his decision to move the embassy on that kind of level, something that will be remembered by the Jewish people for centuries. And I think perhaps there may be a poll that came out like they consider him maybe 76% pro-Israel. So I think it would certainly swing that way. I think many people, particularly in Jerusalem, see the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel as a watershed that finally some nation will actually recognize reality, that this is what the Jewish people have recognized for decades and even millennial, and now a U.S. president, the strongest nation on earth, has really gone ahead and done that. Vice President Pence came, as I mentioned, it was a refreshing visit by him and a historic speech at the Knesset when he gave a very robust speech in defense of the Jewish state.
It's a testimony to the time that we live in. Mm-hmm. We are living in the most miraculous times in history. Yeah. And the fact that we are so privileged and so honored that God would allow us to be part of what He is doing in this hour, that we would be born for such a time as this.
Yeah. Not too long ago, in commemoration of the 70th anniversary, we interviewed Ambassador Michael Oren, who's now the Deputy Minister of Public Diplomacy. And he was describing, he's a historian as well, so he was describing what it was like 70 years ago when Israel had no allies, when they had 600,000 people, about the size of a medium-sized American city. They had just come from the ashes of the Holocaust, when 5 nations attacked them. And yet they survived, but they not only survived, they thrived. Yeah. And look at them now, 70 years, they have one of the strongest armies in the world. They have one of the economies that's the envy of those in the Middle East. It's the startup nation, and technology and innovation is changing the world. It really is a miracle. And that's what he said as well. And you can see ambassadors like him, people on the street, secular, I think, as well as religious, who recognize that Israel today is a miracle.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we've come to the end of another edition of Focus on Israel, and I want you to know we appreciate hearing from you. I hope I've made it clear that the time to stand up is now. Be a leader in your community and in your church. One person can make a difference. Get involved with and support pro-Israel organizations such as PJTN. Call your senators, congressmen, the White House. Let your elected leaders hear from you. Visit our website to learn more. Sign up to receive free newsletters, action alerts, daily blogs, and order our films to share with family and friends. I want to thank you for watching our program today. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren and all Israel. We'll see you next time on Focus on Israel.
To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, P.O. Box 682711, Franklin, Tennessee 37068. You can also support PJTN online. Visit pjtn.org or call 1-877-873-9020.
Anti-Semitism has reached epic proportions, and Israel is now surrounded by nations who seek its destruction. For Israel to lose just one battle would mean losing everything. As Christians, it is our biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and Israel. PJTN needs your help to reach more Christians with this urgent message. Please visit our website to become a member today and order our award-winning documentaries. You must decide that you won't be silent. Sign up now at pjtn.org. God bless you, and thank you for your support and prayers.
Focus on Israel is now available on DVD. Each program DVD contains a wealth of bonus materials, including the premier program that started it all, Focus on Israel, program number 1. Also, bonus interview cuts with experts in their respective fields, informational videos from PJTN documentaries, including Israel Indivisible, the case for the ancient homeland, Lest We Forget, 9/11 and the Rise of Islam, The Forgotten People, Christianity and the Holocaust, Disinformation, the secret strategy to destroy the West, plus the award-winning music video, The Forgotten People. Focus on Israel program DVDs, great educational tools to combat anti-Semitism. Arm yourself and order today. Please go online to pjtn.org. To order, just click on the Store tab. Thanks and blessings from Focus on Israel.